Hi everyone, welcome to History on Trial. This is the Psychology of Identity with Dr. Tracy McCarthy, psychologist, attorney, and educator, and we are continuing the series related to the Amorites, the Amuri, the Amori, and we are looking at the tribes going by the name of Amur. And so this is a cognate of Amorite, and this is a division of Amorite or Amori. And so what we're going to be doing right now is we're going to be looking at these tribes that are in Western Asia, also known by some as Eastern Africa. And so we're also subsequently, we're going to be looking at these tribes actually found in Northern and Western Africa. So we're going to reflect on some of the cognates and then some seemingly unrelated people groups based upon their names that are also known as Amorite historically. We are also going to look at where the Amur tribes are located and the geographic markers with the same name. And so geographic spaces that share that name and often signify that the people group happen to be in the same place. Then we are also going to look at where this Amur surname is most prevalent. If this video appears on anything other than Dr. Tracy McCarthy, it is stolen and unauthorized. Let's get started. And as we get started, I just want to call your attention to the dynamic of these conflations related to Amorite. And so you see that, of course, the name is Amorite, Amori, or Amori. You also see Amaru, and you see this Martu. You see that Amorite also is related to Habiru and Hapiru, and also Hyksos. And you also see that Amorite is related to Syria, which is ancient Aram. Now, what's really interesting is how these names all change over time, so it becomes very confusing. It's like playing a shell game in terms of people and names and place names, and so it's very difficult to keep up with all of these people, particularly when you have a name like Amorite, and then it equates to not only a people, so a lineage group perhaps, but also to religious dynamics and also to culture. So you're talking about not only a people, but also a culture. And so it's possible for someone to be Amoritish or Moritish versus actually being genetically, lineage-wise, an Amorite. And so it can be very, very confusing in terms of historically getting a full understanding of this particular group. And also when you have this dynamic of all of this massive migration that goes along with this name Amorite or this people group or this culture. And now we're going to look at some notations related to the location of the Amur tribes, and we're going to be looking at this in relation to the northern Far East. Now we're going to start off with a refresher from an earlier part of the series where we discussed the migration of the Amurs from the Siberian area into the West and then coming into the Americas. And so another name for the Amurs or the Amur tribe is Nanai. Now this is interesting because if you look at this in terms of an anagram, you put that I in front of the NA, and you have another construct. And so what's really interesting about the Nanai, the Amur, the Amorite, the Amori, is this relationship to birds. And so you see here that the Nanai, they were closely related to raptors, and specifically the owl. And the owl was considered like the shaman's helper. There was also a relationship between birds and infants in this particular culture, in this paradigm. This is all very interesting because of the notations of those depictions of the Amorites and the resemblance of those depictions and owls. And it's also interesting because in ancient times, you note that there is a significant amount of attention paid to birds and feathers and wings in a number of depictions. And so it would be interesting to do some research to determine the relationship between the Amorites and perhaps this proliferation of this deifying birds. And here are just some additional notations related to the Nanai people. You can see the language spoken, Nanai, Russian, and Chinese. The religion is shamanism, and they are definitely identified as the indigenous people of the extreme southeastern Siberia. So basically Russia, and they inhabited the shores of the Amur River and its tributaries. Now we're going to quickly look at this source to identify some additional locations of the Amur tribes in what would be considered the Middle East and also sort of the Eastern Africa area. And now subsequent to this, we are going to look at the Amur tribes that have also been found in Northern Africa, Western Africa, and that area. So this is from the Near Eastern tribal societies during the 19th century. So this is more recent finding of this particular tribe. And here you can see there's a discussion about tribal fission and fusion related to the Amurs and those tribes that are in that area. And you can see it's related to the Aleppo region, Lebanon, and also the Palmyra region. And so that's very interesting. And you see that there is a significant amount of migration going on with tribes in that area. And here you can see additional notations related to mixing, related to the tribes. One thing that is noted, however, is that even though there is this mixing and absorbing in terms of the tribal groups, the clans, there's also the maintenance of distinct histories and understandings of ancestors. And this is really recent. This is state and tribes in Syria, looking at informal alliances and conflict patterns. And so we are going to see that the Amur are also located in this area specifically. And here you see a notation related to the Amur tribe and their location in Syria. And even though this particular tribe seems to be heavily involved in military action in the Syria area, you also see a notation that some other tribes look down upon this particular group. And in this source, you're going to see that there is a relationship again between the Amur and these geographic spaces and sort of that marking of territory, naming places after the people group. And so here you see in this notation from the Heart of Arabia, you see that the Amur tribal group can also be broken down into two of these hamlets in that particular area. And so if you see these names of these hamlets, you might also see a people group related to those names, and those names would also, of course, be under that Amur tribal group umbrella. And here you see additional notations related to their travels through that particular area and what is actually surrounding this particular group of people. Okay, so now we're going to do a surname analysis, and we see that the Amur surname is really heavy in terms of the eastern portion of the world. And you can see the block is hot in the Russia area. It's also hot just in general in terms of that Eurasian area. You see the block is pretty hot. We're going to look at some more specifics in terms of the breakdown of this particular surname and where it is most prevalent. And given the location of Mount Hermon, it's not surprising that this surname, Amur, is most prevalent in Israel and Indonesia. It looks like Indonesia is giving quite a bit of competition there for the top position. And then you have Russia coming in. And then outside of that area, you see down at the bottom, Nigeria. And so that's an interesting notation. So you have approximately 2,109 people with this surname. It's most prevalent in Israel, and the highest density is also in Israel. And as you can recall, Amorite, Amori, Amori, the origin is supposedly in that Palestinian, Syrian area, and so this makes perfect sense. And as we wrap this up, it's just a little reminder that the Amur comes from the Amorite, as related to Amorite and Amuru, and also related to Mount Hermon. And these are depictions that are supposed to be synonymous with the Amorites, the Amori, the Amur people. And so we've covered a little bit about the findings of the Amur proper in Western Asia, what would be considered Eastern Africa area. We've looked at some dynamics related to the cognates of Amorite and Amuru and Amur, and some of these seemingly unrelated people groups. And we've identified where the Amur are located in terms of that name proper in the eastern portions of the world. Okay, so we've seen how the Amorites, the Amori, the Amur, have taken up residence in areas such as the Siberian area. We've also seen taking up residence in what would be considered the Americas. We see taking up residence in those areas around Mount Hermon, so that Western Asia, Eastern Africa area. And we are going to next see how the Amur have taken up residence in Africa. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care. See you soon.